In this video, I'm going to share the story of these big paint chips and how I use them to make cabochons, which will be nice elements for future wood turning projects. Well, hello, Jimmy here, and welcome back to Stuart Arts. Karen and I just got back from a 6,300-mile road trip. We drove from southern Florida here all the way out to Southern California, and we did all the tourist stuff along the way. And coming back, we came Route 66 as far as we could. We made it through to Oklahoma City before we turned south, but along the way, we decided to see the Cadillac Ranch outside of Amarillo. I've always wanted to see this art installation. It's kind of an iconic thing you don't want to miss. So we stopped and got out when we saw it, and it was great photo opportunities, and we took a lot of nice pictures, and people were just out there having themselves a good time. It was really windy that day, in fact to the point to where we were getting kind of sandblasted, and in fact we were covered with dust when we were done. Karen wasn't too happy about that. However, walking around, you can't believe how much paint is on these cars. Kids have been putting graffiti on these things since the 70s or so, and in some cases the paint is so thick it's like stalactites and stalagmites dripping from the pieces, and you can see that the paint is, upwards of a ½ inch to an inch thick in some areas. And not only that, but the paint, I guess from drying in the sun over the years, it has become like a bark, and in some areas it's peeling off the cars. And so walking around, I noticed a few pieces of these paint chunks that were laying on the ground, and I collected up as many as I could carry in one hand with the camera in the other, and walked it back to the car and was looking at it. I thought, boy, this reminds me a lot of Fordite that guys have been using here in wood turning and wood projects. And I thought, I should be able to do something with this. This looks like a very interesting material. I'm going to take this back and see what I can make out of it. These are scraps that picked up off the ground under one of the Cadillacs. I think somebody had peeled it off of one of them and they were just laying on the ground. And so I grabbed these thinking that I could probably make something out of them. They're kind of interesting. These are, basically layers and layers and layers of paint here. This is about 1/4 inch thick here, and just looking at the edge view of it, you can see that there's dozens and dozens of layers of paint. This one's more like a ½ inch here, maybe, and I just buzzed it a little bit with a sander and exposed just all kinds of layers of paint. This is not like Fordite, the baked enamel finish that you have on automobiles. This is whatever comes out of rattle cans, and there's every kind of paint that you can imagine in here, and some of these things are just a tad flexible. They just have a slight amount of plasticity to them, so I have to be a little bit careful with how I work on these. So what I'm going to do today, I took this thin piece here. This is maybe 3/16 to 1/4 inch, and I cut a circle out of it. And I took that circle and I glued it onto this little piece of cherry that I turned on the lathe. You can see that fit right in there like that. So I'm going to go ahead and chuck this up in the lathe and see if I can turn this down into some sort of a usable cabochon. Once I get this turned, what I'll do is I'll leave a little bit of the cherry on the base of it, just so that I can transfer it over to another work, like I can use it as a cabochon or an insert for a lidded box. So I hope that's where I can go with this. It machines readily. You got to take it real easy. You don't really know how well these laminations are from one layer to the next, because you think about all the different kinds of paint that were used over the years. Every kind of paint there is. And let's see what that's looking like. That's going to be really nice. When you do the early sanding, it's a little discouraging because all the colors blend together into sort of a nasty gray color, and then that gets into the piece. But then as soon as you put some water on it, it starts to pop because you're washing that grit out of there. So that's the 220, and so I'm going to go through grits here using wet paper. You kind of have to watch heat with this stuff. If the heat gets too high, it can cause the paint to melt, so I'm just making real sure to keep the piece cool the whole time I'm doing this. Moved up to 1,000 here. I just stuck the paint chip to the end of this cherry dowel, just using some CA. And I used the gel CA because this stuff is a little bit irregular. I sanded it down some on the back to get it flat, but it's not perfectly flat. A lot of holidays, so the gel seemed like the right material to use for this. And I left it overnight. It usually dries in 15 to 30 minutes, but I wanted to make sure it was good and solid before I did this. So that is 1,000 grit. And that's looking really good. We'll do one more grit and then we'll let it dry. And this is some 2,000 here. That is the highest grit I've got. After letting this dry for a while, I got it under a magnifying glass to study it, and I realized that there are some real minute fissures between some of the layers here, and just little holidays. Who knows why? I don't think they're of any real consequence, but I thought it would be a good idea to stabilize this with some CA. So I'm just going to wipe on a little bit here. Now this probably would be a good finish for this, but I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to go back and wet sand it, and we'll look at it from there. My thoughts are that I'm going to lacquer this. I let the CA dry, and I'm going back through the grits with wet sanding. Looks good. We're going to go ahead and dry it, and then we'll do a little lacquer. This one's got about 6 coats of lacquer, rattle can lacquer, and a little polishing in between. And it's been drying for a few hours, so I'm going to go ahead and part it off. Got to be really careful not to hurt. I'm just going to take it to round here, because this will be inset into a lid or something like that. So just clean it up and get it to round, and then I'm going to go ahead and part it off with the thin parting tool. All right, we'll sand off the back, and then let's take a look and see how we did with this piece. Well, this one's done, and let's just put it under the glass here. Hopefully that you can see that well. I'm really happy with how this came out. Very nice. In fact, this one I was kind of looking at it, and it's got some white highlights in it. So off camera, I cut this little Corian setting for it, and so this will fit right in there like that. I think that's going to look real pretty. And I thought that that in turn could be an inset for a lidded box. Like this lidded box has a piece of pewter, and I would just inset this in place of say that pewter there. So I can't wait to start turning wood again on the new Delta mini lathe that I've got back there, and this will be one of my first projects here to get this inset. I did some others, these cabochons, and I'll just show some photos of those after I wrap up here. Well, that's everything for this video. Thanks so much for watching.